notes.
So we're all good with the previous session.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're clear with singleton design pattern? Are you guys clear with
Yes,
singleton
sir.
design pattern?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's clear, sir.
Sorry, what was that? Okay. All right. So we are done with inheritance. What are the four principles of object-oriented programming? What are the four principles of object?
Inheritance,
Inheritance,
polymorphism,
polymorphism, e- encapsulation, and abstraction.
Okay. So we have seen inheritance already, right? And we have also seen polymorphism. What is polymorphism?
Having many forms.
Okay.
one object acting different differently.
Okay. And what are the different types of polymorphism? Method of overloading,
Method overriding.
right? We have discussed this and you have forgotten already. Is which one is supported and which one is not supported here in Python?
Overriding.
Overriding is supported.
Supported.
Right? Overloading is not supported.
Not supported. Overriding.
Overriding is
Supported.
supported. Okay. Right? You have to be very clear. Okay. And now, what is encapsulation? Okay, we'll start looking at encapsulation. Okay, right. What is encapsulation? Encapsulation is okay. So, do you remember the capsule? The tablet?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. What is there within the capsule?
Medicine.
Some medicine, right? So, what technically with what they are doing? If you open that capsule, you can see the medicine. Right, you can see all the medicines that are within that. I mean, it might be in the powder form or some crystal form, whatever you can see, right? Now, what they have done, so now there can be a crystal or a powder or some sort of different medicines. Okay, let's say these are all the different medicines, right? Some sort of different medicines, right? And what they did from outside, so they came up with a capsule, right? And because if I give this medicine to you, right, in the hand, it is possible that you will drop it off and the complete dosage cannot be taken in. Right. So what they did, it is possible that you can drop, you can lose and all of that. So what they did, they came up with a little this capsule where they are putting this entire medicine into this capsule. Right. Right. Something like this. And now that it is in the capsule, is it possible that you can drop the medicine? Is it possible that you will miss it out? No, right? So now this is in one container. This is in one container. What did we achieve with this container? Now there is a safety for medicine, right? And right, so different kind of medicines collected and grouped into one capsule. Different medicines packed into one capsule. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, in the same way,
Yes,
in a
sir.
class, what do we have? We can have in a class, what are the different properties and attributes we can have in a class? Variables.
Variables.
Methods.
Then
Method.
the class variables or instance variables. Methods.
Methods.
What are the different kinds of methods we have?
Static method,
Class method,
Static.
instance,
static method, instance method.
Instance.
Right. So now what are we saying? Now these are also like, consider these are also as part of like, that medicine, like, the different kinds of medicines that we had. Okay. Let us say these are the different kinds of medicines. Now we can treat this as okay, this is a class variable, this is an instance variable, this is a class method, this is a static method, and this is an instance method, right? And okay, this is and you have all the special methods, right? Underscore init, right? Underscore add, all of these special methods. Now these comes with their own, the dunder methods comes with their own set of properties, behaviors. Now this can be another thing and so on, right? Now what we are saying is encapsulation means wrapping up of
That's
wrapping the data, which is nothing but variables are basically used to assign some data to it, right?
yes, sir.
Variables holds data
this.
and methods, right? Into one single entity or unit. Okay, is called encapsulation. What is encapsulation? Wrapping the data, which is the variables and methods into one single entity or unit is called encapsulation, right? Class is used to wrap the data and methods, right? Right. Now, another thing that we discussed when we discussed about this was, now when there is a capsule, right? Now consider this as a class. Consider this as a class. Now within that we have variables, we have methods and everything, right? Now when it is a class, there is a safety for them that it is not falling out, it is not visible outside, right? There is some sort of privacy in this. There is some sort of privacy in this. You don't know what is there within that. You have like, the red white capsule and you just doctor told you to take in and you took it. And whatever the job it has to do, it will do once it gets into your body. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, let us say, right now, what was I saying? Yeah. So now the data that is there in this, the data that is there in this. Now, what is data in this capsule? It is basically the medicine, that it is not just one medicine, right? It is a composition of different drugs formed into one drug, right? And that is basically encapsulated into a capsule. That is encapsulated into a capsule. Yes. Now, when it is encapsulated, there is absolutely privacy that you don't know what is within that capsule. You don't know what is within that capsule, right? In the same way, that privacy is also needed for the classes. That privacy is also needed for the classes. That security, that access, that safety, right? Once it is packed, you should also ensure that there is a safety. There is data. There should be data security. Data security. That is, once it is in the capsule, it should not. It should have a data security, as in like which data can be accessed, which cannot, which should not be accessed, and stuff like that. Okay, so there has to be some sort of data security. And that is where when you encapsulate, meaning it is simple wrapping up of the data, that is variables and methods, into one single entity, is called encapsulation. Here that entity or unit is basically called as class, where we have put the variables and the methods into a class, right? This is encapsulated. Right now in the class we have added all of this. These are encapsulated perfectly fine. Are we clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, now this is encapsulation done. Now once you encapsulate, there should be some sort of security on what should be visible outside and what should not be visible outside. Right, there should be some sort of security control. Now what do I mean by that? Let us say, basically let us say you are packing your suitcase. Right, you are packing your suitcase, right? Basically here, right? So the what all can go in: some sort of clothes, some shoes. You can also put some cash and a lot of other things, or some gold, right? Now, if at all, if this is the case, right? Now, which one do you think should have more security in this? In the suitcase, you can keep your clothes, some shoes, some cash, and some gold. Which one you think which has more, which needs more security in this?
Cash and
Cash.
gold.
Gold, sir.
Yes.
Obviously, the cash and gold. You don't want anybody to access apart from you. Right. Now, let us say this suitcase has basically two containers. Okay. Now, one container where you can keep clothes and, right, anybody can access this. You don't have a problem. But within that, you will put a small box or small something which can be locked, and only you can access it. There you can put your cash and gold. This brings some sort of security to you,
Yes, sir.
right? In the same way, if I am creating a class for an employee, right? Employee have so many details, like, the name, the date of birth, joining date, designation, salary, right? Now, in this entire data, which one do you think which is more secure? Which one needs more security?
Salaries.
Salary.
Salary,
Salary.
because it has to be confidential, it has to be not known to others, which means this should be accessed only to that particular employee, not any other employee. If I have created like employee objects as Ram or Beam or Zoom, right? Now everybody will have their own salary, right? The company's primary objective is, right, to keep the salary confidential, right? In that case, right, I have to somehow secure the salary variable. I have to somehow secure the salary variable. That way, no one else can access it. No one else can access it. Okay. Now, this, in order to provide that security, that security, right, every programming language comes up with a concept called access specifiers or access modifiers. The whole purpose of this access specifiers or access modifiers is to help us with data hiding. Data hiding. What exactly did we achieve here? We were able to hide certain data, yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We have made few things open, right? Or public. Anybody can see, not a problem. But certain things we have hidden it. We have hidden it. Now, in the same way, when it comes to data, even for this, I have to hide this. Hide meaning only if only it should be accessed only through this class, right? And anybody from outside the class should not be able to access this, should not be able to access this. Okay. Now, how do we control that? How do we control that? Now, how can we hide data? Now, there are two things when it comes to encapsulation, right? First is wrapping data, that is variables and methods into single entity. Done. The second point also encapsulation also helps us to encapsulation also provides data security also provides data through S and can hide data. Are we clear? Are we clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when we talk about access modifiers, right, we have three kinds of access modifiers. Public, basically anybody can access. Basically, anybody can access. Another thing called protected. Another thing is private. Public, anyone can access. Right. Protected, only subclasses. Only subclasses. Private, only within class. Only within class. Can access from anywhere. Right? Protected, if I have to access, I should be a subclass of that. Only then I can access. Private, I can access them only within the class. Only within the class. Okay. These access specifiers can be applied on variables and methods as well. Variables and methods. Can be applied on both variables and methods. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Now, when it comes to other programming languages, like may it be Java or any other programming language, they have a very strict way of access modification, right? Access modifiers are pretty strict. You have, like, as I mentioned, you can create a variable as, if at all, if it is Java, right? If I'm talking about Java, I can just say public int a is equal to 10. Now this is my access specifier. Private int salary is equal to 10,000. Protected string name is equal to Java. Now here in this is like, with respect to Java I'm talking about. Okay. When creating variables itself, you are using the access specifiers. You are using the access specifier. Is it a public? Is it a private? Or is it a protected? Okay. Now when it comes to Python, right? Access modifier, this is very strict. You have to provide the access specifiers. If you don't provide, there is another thing called default. Right? There is another thing called default. So that is fine. Now, when it comes to Python, right? Python is not strict. Okay. You can write a variable as a is equal to 10, salary is equal to 20, or name is equal to, right? There is no concept of access modifiers in Python. There is no concept of access modifiers at all in Python, right? Okay, this I'll write. You remember this from Python. There is no support for from the language. There is no support for access modifiers. Okay, are we clear on this? From the
Yes, sir.
language, there
Yes,
is
sir.
no support for access. In Java, you can use it public, private, you can write. From the language, there is support and hence you can use it. But when it comes to Python language, there is no support for access modifiers itself. There is no support for access modifiers itself. But without the data security, it is difficult to write an object-oriented programming. See, if you are writing an object-oriented programming, right, we need to have this concept of access specifiers, right? Concept of access specifiers. But Python, the language itself does not support the access specifiers. Then how are we going to handle them? Right? We need to have the access modifier. But that is where, like, there are a lot of people, a lot of developers across the world. They came up with certain convention. What do we call it as? Convention. Since language does not support, right? What developers across world, right, came up with certain convention. This is just like, how to name a variable in Python. This is a convention. It is not a strict. There is no rule that you have to write your variable like this. But developers across the world, for variable, you have to come up with this. For method, you have to come up with the same casing. If it is a class name, you have to, instead of first name, there is a camel casing. These are all, it is not strict. It is not necessary that you should follow. Even if you don't follow this, the things will just work fine. Things will just work fine. But why should we follow? Because this is basically called Python standard convention. Python standard convention. As in, there are people who have set up a rules that if you are writing a Python code, use this as a reference and use them to create your variables or follow this rule to create your variables, methods, or a class name. In the same way, in the same way, in Python also, in the same way, in the same part of this convention, they also mentioned, okay, if you are writing a private. So now there are, when it comes to Python, there is only concept of now public or private. There is no protected concept as such because Python language itself does not come up with that. But developers across the world, okay, decided, okay, if you are mentioning something as a private, you use a certain syntax. If it is a public, do not use that syntax sort of thing. Now, if you use for any variable name, right? Now, if it is a public, I will just say is equal to 10, no problem. If I have to make it a private, I will add two underscores before it and then write. I will add two underscores before it and then I'll write. Okay, that way this variable can be accessed only within the class. If I'm seeing that a variable has two underscores before it, or few people use two underscore, few people use a single underscore, right? These are private, which means I'm not supposed to access these variables or methods from outside the class. They should be accessed only within the class. If at all, if I don't see any prefix as underscore or double underscore, which means this is public, I can access this from anywhere. Now, Python does not restrict you from doing this, but the moment you see something like that, you have to understand that, okay, boss, fine, right? These are private things and I should not access. Right now, for example, you have this traffic lights, right? So there is red, orange, and green. So what does this mean? Orange, you have to slow down. Red, you have to stop. Green, you can pass through, right? Now, is there a strict rule that will avoid you from doing that? Even if there is a red signal, you can still go, you can still pass through, right? Yes or no?
Yes,
Sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Even if there is a red light, there is no one to stop you. You can still pass through, right? But what makes you stop? Because you have told that if at all if there is a red light, which means you have to stop. Right? You have made aware that if there is a red light, you have to stop. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In the
Sir.
same
Yes,
way,
sir.
when it comes to Python doesn't restrict you that, like, if you are using a double underscore, or if you're not using any underscore, right, which means you can access anywhere. You can access anyway. Python as a language does not restrict you, but as a Python developer, if you see in some class is people using double underscore or a single underscore, which means that is private data that should be accessed only within the class. That should be accessed only within the class. Okay. And if you see something without any underscores, which means you can access that from outside the class also. You can access that from outside the class also. You just like, you were made aware of the traffic lights or the traffic signals. Now I'm making you aware about this Python concept of public and private. Now, from now on, if you see something as double underscore or a single underscore before a variable or a method name, which means you are supposed to access that from within the class itself. You cannot access them from outside the class. Right now, that basically provides data hiding. This concept basically provides data hiding. Since you cannot access these, you should not access these from outside the class. There is some sort of data security implemented. right? If it is no suffix, no prefix with this, which is either single or double underscore, which means this is public. This can be accessed from anywhere. And if you are using this private thing, this should be accessed only within the class. From the outside the class, the objective is it is restricted. You should not use. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us see the examples. Okay. Encapsulation. Now class employee, right? I'm going to create some variables, name, salary. What else can be confidential when it comes to employee? Only the salary, right? Date of joining. Self dot name is equal to whatever is being sent as part of the parameter. Self dot salary is equal to whatever is part of the parameter. Self dot date of join is equal to date of join. That is basically sent from the parameter. Now employee is equal to employee, and I have to pass certain information. Something like this. All right. Now okay, this is what we have seen and we have known so far. Right now, if I just execute this, yeah, this is going to just work fine. Right, I'm not have added any print statement, so this is just going to execute. Now, I'm just going to say print employee dot salary, and salary is supposed to be confidential. And when I say confidential, that the access to this salary should be only within the class. It should not be able to access. Now we are able to access this from outside the class.
No, sir.
I'm accessing this from outside the class, right? Am I within the class? The salary I'm able to access from outside, right? I'm not in the class. The class definition is ended here. Now I'm outside the class. Yes or no?
Sir.
Yes, yes.
Am I within the class or outside the class when I'm executing, when I'm accessing salary? When I'm executing this piece of statement, am I within the class or outside the class?
I'm sorry.
Everybody, right? It is outside. Within the classes, if I write something here, this is within the class. Now because the Python works on indentation basis, the moment I come back to the class level, which means I'm outside the class, I'm no more within the class. And I'm able to create an object for that class. I'm able to access the salary, and I am also able to update the salary. This is the problem. Now salary is something that it should not be accessible outside. Salary is something that should be accessed only within the class. Now after this, right, I have updated the salary, and if I just check the salary, it has been updated, it has been modified, and salary is something that should not be modified just the way, right? Now I'm able to modify, and this should not be allowed. This should not be allowed. I have to bring in, see, the idea is that people can misuse when writing the code, or the other developers can misuse the private objects, misuse the private object. So we don't want to let people do that, to misuse certain data. If certain data you mean this should be private, so it has to be made private. Now Python is not strictly Python doesn't have a strict access specifiers or modifiers, but it is our understanding that if I add certain prefix to a particular variable, which means we can denote, we can mention that it is private. And even after you mention something as a private, Python still let people access it. But the moment you see something as private, as a good developer, as a Python developer who knows the convention, you should not be accessing that. You should not be accessing that. Now, as I said, there are two ways. People use either double underscore or a single underscore. Both comes with certain little tiny property. If I use a double underscore, we'll see that. Right now, let us say if I see something as underscore salary, right? Underscore salary, right? Which means it is private. Yes. Which means I have mentioned that it is private. So people
sir.
from outside the class should not be able to access it. But still, yeah, Python is, as I said, it is not a strict, it is not strict, right? I can still access, right? I can still access. Right, I'm able to access, I'm able to update. But technically, as a good developer, you should not be doing this, because you say that there is an underscore to it. Okay, then I'm not supposed to access this. You should have that much knowledge. Right now, another way to denote something as private is you can use double underscore. You can use double underscore. Now let us see what happens if I use a double underscore and try to do it. Let me execute it. What does it say? Attribute error. Employee object has no attribute salary. So with this, did we achieve that private concept, which means from the outside of the class, you cannot access that variable. From outside the class, you cannot access that variable.
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But what did I say? Python does not have the access specifiers at all. Then how come this is working? This is basically hidden now. Yeah, right. My statement seems wrong here.
Yes, sir.
Yes or no? What did I
Yes,
say?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Python doesn't have access modifiers at all. But here, the moment I use double underscore, it is evident that it is not available when I'm trying to access that variable from outside the class. It is giving an attribute error, meaning it is saying this class doesn't have this variable. Why are you trying to access this? It is basically telling this class doesn't have the variable as double underscore salary at all. Right, which means we obtained the data security. But if I use one hack here, right? If I use one hack as adding the underscore class name to it, adding underscore class name to it, I will end up accessing it. I can access it the moment I can access and modify it, right? But as a Python developer, you also know this, that you can surpass this access using this simple concept, right? This basically is called name mangling. Okay, it is called name mangling. But if I don't add this underscore employee, which is the underscore class name, right? I can still access. But the moment I try to access something with a double underscore, it will tell it is an attribute error. It is attribute error. Okay, but however, it is bringing in certain security to us. Is it bringing certain? Yes, I can still access if I add underscore class name to it, right? I can still access that. Okay, even from outside the class. Fine. But still, if I just use double underscore and people try to access the double underscore variable directly without using underscore class name, does it bring some sort of security? Some sort of data hiding?
Yes, sir.
right? And hence,
Yes.
lot of companies outside, right? Lot of companies, lot of Python developers tend to use double underscore to denote something as private. Tend to use double underscore to denote something as private. Using double underscore before suffixed to a variable name, you can achieve data hiding partially. You can achieve data hiding partially. Are we clear?
Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now the interview question. Now interview question. Right. Now does Python support access modifiers? What would you say? Does Python
The,
support access modifiers?
no, Python does
No,
not
sir.
support
It will
access
not
No.
support.
modifiers.
Right? Python does not support. Then how can you achieve data hiding? How can you achieve data hiding?
The hiding.
How can you achieve data hiding if the Python does not support the thing? How can you achieve data hiding?
By defining underscore underscores.
By defining?
Double underscore,
Double
double
underscore,
underscore the
sir.
attribute.
No. You should say that by following certain convention, by using either single underscore or a double underscore as a prefix to a variable, right? We denote something as a private. Yes or no? You cannot just say like, I
Yes,
will
sir.
put a double underscore in front of it, right? You say that by following certain convention, which is either suffix the variable with a double underscore or a single underscore, we can achieve data hiding, the access modification. If I denote something as double underscore or a single underscore before a variable, which means I'm marking that as private. Yeah. Can we say this much?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now, third question would be, if I denote something as double underscore before a variable, can you or access this from outside the class? Can you access this from outside the class? The double underscore.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Directly? No. But what if I add a class name to it? Now this I can access if I add an underscore class name before that variable,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
We
sir.
saw that as an example just a few seconds back, which means can you access the variable with a double underscore as a prefix from outside the class? Yes, you can. Directly? No. But if you prefix that underscore class name to the variable, you can access. This concept is called name mangling. Name
Handling.
mangling.
Handling.
Now, the question will be like, what is name mangling in Python? What is name mangling in Python? So name mangling is when you add a double underscore to a variable within the class, right? To denote something as a private. And if you try to access that variable from outside the class, it will throw attribute error. But if you just prefix that variable with underscore class name, you can access that variable. And that is called name mangling. And that is called name mangling. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Yes,
Clear.
sir.
Yep.
Clear, sir.
Right. Now let us go back. From the outside, if I try to access from outside the class, yes, it is throwing an error. But can I access this within the class? Def salary. right? Let us see. Let me call this function. If I try to access this outside the class anyway, this is going to throw an error. But if I try to access that within the class. Now I'm accessing get salary function. I'm accessing get salary function, which is public because I did not add any prefix to it. Yes, I did not add any prefix to it, which means it is public. But from this public function, which is in the class, I'm accessing a private variable. I'm accessing a private variable. This is allowed. If there is a public function which is accessing a private variable, that is fine. You can access that public function. As far as something is public, you can access from outside the class. Right now, get salary is accessing a private data within the class, which is totally fine. But let us see if it works. Right? Does it work? It says 20,000. Get salary.
Sir.
Accessing private data from public method. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, who can
Sir.
change the salary of a particular employee? Only HR can change the salary of a particular employee. Now, in that way, I have to control that. Now, now if I have to change some salary, right, I will add set salary function. Okay. Set salary function. Okay. Now here I'm going to access my private variable, or maybe I'll check if who is changing it. Let me just check a user. If user dot role equal to HR, only then, right, is equal to whatever else raise permission error. Allowed. Now let me just create one simple user class. Okay. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to create few user objects. Role is HR. Right now, employee dot set salary. I'm going to say 30,000 and I'm going to pass manager object. He is trying to modify, but if I run this, right, it is going to throw error, permission error, not allowed. Okay. But if I change this to HR, right, if I change this to HR, it's wrong. And try to get the salary and try to get the salary, right? This will work because HR has the role called HR, and that is where what I'm checking. And this is going to update the data. This is going to update the data. So if you make certain variables as private, right, and if you have to modify, then you need a get and set functions. You need a get and set functions. These are called getter functions. These are called setter functions. In the setter functions, you can access setter functions are basically public functions. And within that, you can access the private variables and you can put a control on who is going to modify, how is it going to modify, right? And you can also put a control as on the salary as well, right? If salary should always be greater than 0, right? If it is lesser than or equal to 0, you're going to throw an error. Raise value error. Salary should be greater than 0. Now, when I'm trying to set the salary, yes, even if it is a HR, even if it is a HR, and I'm going to set minus 2000 or 20,000 accidentally, now this is going to throw an error. Salary should be greater than 0. So you can, when setting the value, now are you able to control something like, what value can be set, what value should not be set? You're able to control the behavior of the private data using the setter functions, using the setter functions. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And
Okay. This is how you can achieve data security and how you can hide data. What is the convention that you have to use? And once the data is set to be as a private, you should not be as a good developer. You should not access them from the outside the class, and that should be allowed to access only within the class. And if you have to access or modify, then you need to come up with a setter and a getter functions. And getter functions where you can access the private data and return that value, fine. And getter functions, you can use it to update, sorry, setter function, you can use the setter functions to update the value on the private variable, right? And you can add that certain control onto this setter functions. Okay.
Okay, sir.
okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
Now
sir.
that is encapsulation. Now encapsulation meaning wrapping up of data into one single data, which is the variables and methods, into one single entity called encapsulation. We can use example class. And once you are able to encapsulate data, you should be providing the data security. But in Python, since Python does not support the access modifiers from the language itself, but as a convention, you are using either single or a double underscore to denote something as a private. And if you don't prefix the variable with single or double underscore, which means it is public, anybody can access and modify. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the homework, write a class to classes. Okay, write a class for customer, which is bank customer, right? Now what all a bank customer can have, right? Account number, right? Balance, right? Phone number, address, right? Account, balance, phone number, address, right? Still many other constructs can come in. In this, which one do you think it is private? Which one is not private? And you have to write that class definitions along with the setter and getter methods by adding certain control, right? Who can modify the balance? Who can? So obviously you can modify the balance, right? You can always deposit, you can always withdraw, but who can do it? Only withdraw, only you can do it. Balance, you can give it to a teller who is an employee there, and he will update the balance based on whatever the amount that you try to deposit. right? Now you have a functions to deposit. You should have a functions to withdraw, right? That controls the data, which is the balance, right? And you should have certain private or certain public variables, public methods, and you should be able to update the data using that. And now the homework is you have to you have to you have to come up with all the variables that a bank customer has, and you have to decide which can be private, which can be public, and for whatever is private, you have to provide a setter and a getter methods. Okay, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? Deposit, you should not be able to deposit negative values. You should not be able to deposit negative values. Withdraw, you should not be able to withdraw greater than the balance. You should not be able to withdraw greater than the balance. Right? You have to control all of that. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? That is your homework. Okay. I've completed. Tomorrow we will start with the last concept of the object-oriented programming.
Abstraction.
Abstraction. Okay, this will start tomorrow, and by tomorrow I want you guys to complete this. Am I clear?
Right, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Then that's it for today. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.